Hello everyone, welcome to the Ginger Snaps here, where I'll be discussing horror movies for you guys in a very blunt way. I'm your host, Steven Harrold, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you guys my ranking video from worst to best, ranking the Elm Street franchise. Now, throughout the whole month of HORROR-WEEN, I had reviewed the whole Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and now it's time for me to rank all 9 films from worst to best. So just in case you guys are probably wondering, well, whatever happened to the Freddy vs. Jason movie review that was not done? I purposely excluded it from my month of HORROR-WEEN ranking, just for the sole simple fact that I have already reviewed that film back last year on the 20th anniversary. So if you want to look at that review, I will post the link in the description below. But basically, I had to review that film as 3 separate types of things. I had to review it as its own standalone film, as a Friday the 13th, and as a Nightmare on Elm Street. So, you'll have that rating in there for the Elm Street franchise. But other than that, when it comes to this franchise, of course, a lot of people would be very objective or subjective to which order they would place all these films. And of course, this is my own personal opinion. This is my own rating of myself. It's only fitting that a lot of people know what everyone's top 3 usually are, especially with 2 of the films. But when it comes to the bottom of the barrels, or even in the middle, it always changes. That's what's so fun about this franchise. Now, enough talking. Let's get into the rating. So this is, from worst to best, ranking the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Coming in at last place, the bottom of the barrel, is none other than Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Now, like I've already said in my review that I had already given it a 0 out of 10, this movie basically has just no redeeming quality whatsoever when it comes to rewatchability. I mean, Robert Englund does his best in this film, but he is at his worst when it comes to the comedy and slapstick humor. I mean, he's not terrifying in this fucking film at all. The characters absolutely all suck. Let's put in the backstory that, oh, we found Freddy Krueger's daughter in this film. More mythology of Freddy is just being exposed in this film, left, right, and center, but with too much quirky humor into it. And it's just almost unwatchable. But, you know, after rewatching it from many years and then finally rewatching it again, it was only safe to say that, yeah, this is definitely the worst in the franchise. Especially since it's like, yeah, I can't even take this film seriously. So that is why Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare isn't 9. Coming in at 8th, second last place, is none other than the Nightmare on Elm Street remake from 2010. Now, I did have a lot of praise back in the day in 2010 watching this film. I was in love with the fact that Freddy became scary again. I loved the performance of Jackie Earle Haley. But, you know, 14 years later, you tend to realize, maybe something's not right here. And that's correct. I mean, the fact that the characters are all fucking just bland and boring, just like Freddy's Dead, but worse. Nancy being played by Rooney Mara, not giving a shit about this character or this franchise or even the film itself, almost wanting to quit acting, and just, you know, basically just lazily fucking went through this whole movie. Just is atrocious. Jackie Earle Haley does his best performance as Freddy Krueger as best as he can, but with a shitty script, and also the fact that they actually decided to make Freddy Krueger a child molester in this film, instead of going with the different route of, it's a remake, so let's change some things. I rather preferred it be Freddy was innocent the whole fucking time. That's why he's after the kids. And also, on top of that, even banking on the name Nightmare on Elm Street. The fact that only one of the kids lives on Elm Street, and that's not the reason why Freddy's after them. They're a bunch of kids from Bad Ham Preschool, and they all snitched on Freddy. So, this film was mistitled. It should have been called A Nightmare at Bad Ham Preschool, not Nightmare on Elm Street. The dream sequences are amazing, and the transition from real world to dream world, great. But the amount of, let's rip off some things that we saw from the previous fucking film, the 1984 original, let's rip them off. Like the wall scene, the tub scene, the hallway scene, everything that's just ripped to shit, and it just replaced with CGI. It just looks bad. And, you know, again, I'm not going to really harken or be hard on Jackie Earle Haley's look for Freddy Krueger in this film. They try to go realistic, whatever, but nonetheless, this film is not great, and it's the reason why we've been now sitting here for 14 years waiting for another film. So that is why the 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street is at number 8. At number 7 on this list is going to be Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Now, this is where the humor and the puns kind of get a little too out of place, but it's not like Freddy's dead, right? The fact that we only have 3 kills in the whole entire film absolutely sucks. Lisa Wilcox's Alice is back, but a lot better in this film. And Freddy Krueger, of course, you know, he's not the greatest in this film. He doesn't even look the greatest at all. But at least they had some backstory that could make sense. I mean, like the interesting idea of having Freddy invade a baby's dream while they're being made, right? They're being born, right? It's a little bit interesting, but also kind of falls flat. It's like, does that really actually exist? Is that a real thing? I don't know. The kid is a little bit of an annoying kind of thing. Jacob really kind of sucks. But, I mean, when it comes to the other characters, they are all very bland and boring. But at least I got a little bit of fun when it comes to this film. Even though I ranked it pretty low, it is one of those films where it's just like, hey, you know, you could like sit down with your friends, drink a few times, and just, you know, have a little bit of a blast. Hell, even have a conversation or whatever during this fucking movie. But nonetheless, the film is not as bad as the other ones. So that's why A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, is at number 7. At number 6 on this list is going to be Freddy vs. Jason from 2003. Now, reviewing this film as its standalone, a Friday the 13th, and a Nightmare on Elm Street film kind of actually helped me when it comes to my personal ranking or positioning when it comes to this list. Now, of course, in terms of a standalone film, Freddy Krueger has been forgotten, and he needs to enlist the help of Jason to have the kids of Elm Street remember him. And then eventually, at some point, they fight. Yeah, you know, an hour into the movie, they decide, oh, let's have them fight finally. Like, yeah, what was the title of the movie called? Freddy vs. Jason. We all know that. But then when it comes to reviewing this film as a Nightmare on Elm Street film, it pays more homage to A Nightmare on Elm Street than it does Friday the 13th. Now, Freddy Krueger does do a lot of his good work in this film, and then, of course, this was Robert Englund's swan song when it comes to playing this character one last time in a featured film, and we didn't know it at the time. But Freddy Krueger's look looks great. I don't mind his glove being a little bit more heavy duty, and the fact that he only gets 1 kill in the whole entire film is kind of like, oh, well, he kind of got fucked over. But when you have Jason in the film getting all the fucking kills and known for a body count, might as well trade it up. But other than that, when it comes to Elm Street terms, Freddy being after Laurie because he lives in the fucking house that Nancy used to live in, and, you know, he needs the kids of Elm Street and Springwood to remember him and get them off this hypnocell, which became a factor from number 3, is interesting. And when finally Freddy comes out of the dream world and into the real world and see that fight between him and Jason, this film was very much a one-sided fight for Freddy. I mean, like, he basically owned the whole entire fight. And then when he meets his demise, it's not even Jason who even does it. But nonetheless, this film has a lot of nostalgia for me, especially being this was one of the films I was excited for in 2003 as a kid. But it has not very much aged well since it released in 2003, and it fucking shows. But other than that, that's why Freddy vs. Jason is at number 6 on this list. Here we are at the top 5, and at number 5 we have Wes Craven's New Nightmare. For a film that predates Scream by 2 years and making it a very meta film, I said in my review, too, that this film kind of isn't really it for me when it comes in terms of a Nightmare on Elm Street film. But in terms of experimenting, it does work. I mean, Heather Langenkamp plays herself in this film, and this is probably her best fucking role. And Robert Englund playing a demonic version of Freddy Krueger that is not like the movie counterpart is actually very nice. I do like Freddy's look. I don't mind the kills in this film. They are a little bit more imaginative and also a little bit creative, especially when it comes to that hospital scene where the babysitter gets killed. And everything else about this movie has a lot more mythos to it. The fact that it ties in with, you know, a children's storybook, and even the kid, Dylan, does a great job. I mean, like, I don't mind the kid. He was kind of annoying when I first watched him, but I don't mind him. It's just like, okay, I can get over it now. Okay, whatever. But Miko Hughes does a great job in this film. When it comes to the film itself as a Nightmare on Elm Street, like I said, even though I don't feel like it's appropriate for a Nightmare on Elm Street, it's too meta, because there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, and I think this film does not answer it. But when I see, Bob Shaye, Sarah Risher, you see fucking Wes Craven, you see a bunch of the actors in that funeral scene, you see a bunch of shit that's going on, it's nice to see, and it's just like, wow, what a time capsule type of a movie. And for an anniversary film itself, too, it actually doesn't do too bad. That's why Wes Craven's New Nightmare... Man, I'm fucking that title up. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, there we go, is at number 5 on this list. At number 4 on this list is going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Now, of course, when I watched this film at a young age, I was kind of like, oh, okay, this is pretty interesting. And then rewatching it again, it's like, this film has some charm to it still. I mean, even though there's the heavy gay overtones when it comes to this film, it doesn't hurt the fact that it's still a Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, for a follow-up sequel, it's a bit odd to have this as your sequel, but nonetheless, it's one of those experiments that, kind of has garnered some fan attention. Mark Patton as Jesse in this film is not too bad of a character, especially for a lead. Freddy Krueger, played against by Robert Englund, does phenomenally. His look even looks really intense and intimidating. And of course, as we all know, this is the film where that famous glove disappearance happened, and it's got that nice little backstory. But of course, all the characters in this film were actually fucking nice. I mean, you have Jesse's love interest, Lisa, you have Grady, and Coach Snyder, even to an extent. But other than that, this film is nice to actually watch from time to time. And it's like, yeah, I'll actually watch this one again. So that's why Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, is at number 4 on this list. Alright, here we are at the top 3. And at number 3 is going to be Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Now remember, this film was the very first Nightmare on Elm Street film I ever watched full through. And had certain little effects going on the VHS tape, but nonetheless, it doesn't, hurt the credibility of this film. Freddy Krueger looks the most intimidating in this film when it comes to 1, 2, 3, and 4. Freddy Krueger this is the peak of the MTV type of era too. He's more of a James Bond type character in this, and just the action sequences, the dream sequences in this film, all just have that 80s nostalgia to it. Lisa Wilcox as Alice is phenomenal in the second act of this film. I don't like how dirty the characters from part 3 get killed off so fast. Joey Kincaid especially. I mean, Kristen Parker being played by a different actress, it's kind of like, oh, well, that sucks. But nonetheless, this movie has that charm. It's the reason why a lot of people will say number 4 could be a lot higher, maybe a lot lower on people's lists. I know 4 is pretty, split even. But with everything I remember seeing, even including that fight sequence between Freddy and Alice, is great. And I can't get enough of it. And that's why A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, is at number 3. And here we are at the top 2. I know when it comes to these two films, I already know you guys are like, yeah, we all knew it's one of these two, but these ones will change from time to time. So whatever I pick at number 2 in this list might become number 1 in a month from now. Who knows? But other than that, let's get to it. At number 2, I'm going to say the original A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven created this film with the sole purpose of making slasher films not so typecast, have to wear a mask, have an edged weapon, chasing a bunch of horny teenagers. This one went a step further. You gave your antagonist personality, you have a setting where people cannot run from, and you make it scary. And that's what made A Nightmare on Elm Street work. The look of Freddy Krueger became instantly iconic. You have the characters of Nancy, Tina, Glenn, and Rod be very well-loved characters, especially since this is the film debut of Johnny Depp, so there's that going for it. And just the imagination of what goes on in this film. I mean, you have Tina's demise, going up the wall, over the ceiling, bleeding to death. You get Glenn getting sucked into the blood and a whole geyser of blood shoots out from the bed to the ceiling. Nancy's final battle with Freddy Krueger is amazing. Everything about this film just fit the time. It made people scared of even going to sleep. And it put Freddy Krueger on the map as a horror icon. And it's the reason why A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984 is at number 2. And well, that basically means number 1 is none other than A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This film has everything going for it. You have a bunch of cast and characters that you loved from the first film, and the new ones that they intertwine with, that you care about as just as much. You have a setting that is just fucking amazing to go for. The dream sequences are amazing. The characters just all hit the mark. Freddy Krueger being just fucking pure evil, and he has that moment of, yeah, he's the wisecracker still, but he's still horrifying enough as it is. And even the music from Docket is just amazing. This film, rewatching it, was like, oh yeah, this is definitely number 1 on my list. Because the film is memorable nonetheless. There was a lot of scenes I remember as a kid when I watched this film, and then growing up today, like, yeah, that's still an effective scene. And just how we introduced Freddy's chest of souls is like, okay, that's fucking interesting. Everything about this film was just amazing, and it's a perfect tie-in with the first film. Not much as the second film was, but this is the perfect tie-in from the first and the third. And the fact that it's always these two films that are neck and neck for what's number 1, not what's number 2, is very fitting because a lot of people love these two films. But for me, I'm gonna have to actually say, especially saying that I gave this film a 10 out of 10, it's only fitting for this list that I say that A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, is number 1. And that's it, guys. That's all the Nightmare on Elm Street videos coming out on the channel for a time being now. I know there's a lot more videos to do, like, you know, favorite characters, least favorite characters, Freddy's look, all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to just focus on the films themselves, and finally managed to do it. And now, with this ranking done, I'd like to know, what is your guys' personal ranking of the whole Elm Street franchise? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up and subscribe for more content. And don't forget to hit that bell notification so you get notified about all the other videos coming out on this channel. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. This has been the Ginger Snaps here. I'm your host, Steven Harrold, and this is also the conclusion of the month of Horror-WEEN. I know we're in November now, but it still feels like October. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for taking part in watching the videos for my month of Horror-WEEN. Next year, we're going to have to plan something a little bit different. But until then, thank you guys for watching my reviews for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I will talk to you guys later. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep. Now stay spooky, everyone.